hope that you all had a Merry Christmas and that you're all doing well. Before we start the video, I do want to say a huge thank you to 18,000 subscribers, which I'd say is quite an accomplishment considering that I just started this channel in April of this year. For the final video of 2022, we are going to be shattering the world, specifically Doge's Shattered Europa. This mod breaks up every nation in the world into tiny pieces, each roughly the same size, and to go along with the many new tags is quite a few new religions, cultures, idea groups, many things to keep the game fresh and interesting for players, or in our case, observers. There's more content in this mod that I could quickly spout off for you in the intro, so I encourage you to check it out for yourself. It's linked in the description next to my Patreon, Discord, subreddit, Twitter, all those things. And while you're down there, don't forget to like the video if you are excited, and subscribe and ding the bell so you don't miss uploads in 2023. Back with another extremely highly requested video. Doge's Shattered Europa basically makes every province in the world, or every state in the world, an independent nation, and we're going to take a look at how it goes. Now, it's not perfect. It's not like every single state is its own area. A lot of it is kind of based on historical borders and stuff like that. So like you can see that we have a Macedonian Republic over here. We've got Byzantium. We have Osman, which is cool. We have Eretria over here. And it also definitely changes up all of the religions as well. The religious map mode for the old world is, it's definitely different than vanilla. You can see we've got tons of different heretics for Christians, which is cool. But we also have the old faiths of Slavic, Remuva, and Suo-Minusko. And also in the new world, we've got some Norse boys because Vinland exists in this timeline. And Vinland starts with a colonist and global settler increase. So safe to say, we're going to see some colonization in the new world. So I'm excited for that one. Apparently we have this Bure Bambouk or whatever, which is an arrow on the Mali flag. And then also over in California, we have another one, which is this Yingzhou, which is a Chinese republic, but it is old world roots. So they have feudalism embraced. That should be pretty interesting. But you guys know the drill. We speed 5 and we unpause. Oh, and the initial startup is chugging. Remember, I'm running on a Ryzen 9, so hopefully this thing speeds up a bit, but with all these tags, you would imagine it would run a little slow, but after the initial sort of setups, it should get a lot better. Of course, before we get too far, we need to take a look at who the great powers of the world are. Number 1 is Ming, number 2 is Majapahit with Qi in 3rd, Ayutthaya in 4th, Sunda, Ji, Wu, Brunei, Min, Shu, Yan, and Nanfang Jidi, or however you pronounce that. So there's 12 great powers in this timeline. We're going to see how things go in long term. And I didn't look too much at this, but we actually have new cultures as well. We've got Norman over here. We have Northumbrian. We've got a couple over here, Sudeten, which is a new one. We have Gietz, or however that's pronounced, and then Scunian over here. So definitely some new ones we got to be keeping an eye out for. Andalusian is actually massive this time around, with Portuguese much smaller. Galician is much bigger as well, and Asturian is a new one. I don't know what the Chinese culture group looks like in vanilla off the top of my head, but this looks huge compared to what it used to, though I could be wrong. I don't know. And oh yeah, it is definitely running slow. This is chugging. We're only about 20 years in, and it's been about 30 minutes in real life. So this video might take a minute to make, and I hope you guys appreciate it. If you do, make sure you leave a like on it. It's much appreciated. Northumberland and Wessex have split most of England, though London is holding out down here in the south, and it looks like in the west of Iberia, Portugal has formed. Russia is very much a mess of nations, but a couple of them have definitely blobbed out, and I actually am using a setting that comes with the mod that basically will give certain random nations bonuses to allow them to sort of blob out a bit. It's supposed to be to add difficult for the player, but you know, figure it'll be interesting for us to see. Of course, we have a very cool tag over here, Assyria. If you guys haven't checked out Ancients Reborn, it is a mod that I actually made on the Steam Workshop. You can play as Assyria, so I recommend you check that out as well. But yeah, taking a look around, I'm looking for interesting things to point out, and honestly, it's still very much a mess. We may end up needing to let this guy run a bit past 1821, at least I assume we're going to have to, but you know, hopefully you guys appreciate that if that is the case. Our definitely not Mali over here in Brazil has expanded by 2 provinces. Vinland has not, because I think they are way too poor to colonize, nor has this Confucian nation in the Bay Area. So I guess we just let some more time pass and take a look here shortly. It's 1485 and the world is looking very, very green. We have Styria over here in Carpathia, Bosnia, Austria region. Portugal taking up the majority of the development in Iberia at this point and making their way into the Maghreb. And of course, Northumberland, who has gone from Kent all the way up to Orkney and the Outer Hebrides, and as well as they're taking a bit of land over here in Ireland. So safe to say they're having a good game, probably going to, you know,
form Great Britain. I wish that there was more variety to the formables in the game, even if they're just cosmetic tags. I wish there was more formables in vanilla that weren't just like, you know, the basics like Spain, France, Great Britain. I feel like you see it a minor pop off and it's really exciting. You're like, oh, this is cool, man. I love seeing an underdog, and they formed a major. It's just like, I don't know. I think it's boring. I almost missed this as well. We have a massive Brabant over here. Tons of development in the lowlands, working their way all the way over to Kessel. So yeah, they're doing pretty good. So I didn't mention this in the beginning, and I'm not sure if this is intentional. I assume it is, but the HRE exists, but doesn't actually exist. There is no HRE provinces, and the HRE UI shows no emperor or anything like that, so that's pretty weird. Oh wow, okay, so I didn't realize that there was a ton new idea groups as well. The reason why I noticed that is because I saw, oh, Jerusalem went with propaganda ideas. They seem okay, I guess. There's some absolutism in there and stuff like that, so they seem pretty good. Yeah, a little bit of siege ability, manpower, so interesting. 16 total idea groups, which is crazy. And it does look like Catholic ideas give them Deus Vult. So it looks like Jerusalem is actually Deus Volting a little bit already. So that's a thing. With no Holy Roman Empire, there's also no Mandate of Heaven in China. So it looks like once somebody starts to consolidate the development over here, it should be a little more stable. Should be. We have this Sukhon These guy over here doing well in Ayutthaya. Definitely pushing Ayutthaya out of Ayutthaya. And it looks like Sunda is starting to become the major guy over here, but I think you guys know who I'm rooting for. All my homies love the boner boys. Yo lads, how about you rate my encirclement here? And in the New World, it's still just this Buri Bambuk guy that is growing. Vinland has not grown, nor has these guys over here. Well, I guess I should rephrase that. Vinland hasn't colonized. They took a province from Iceland somehow, probably rebels if I had to guess, but yeah, they took this province over here. And it looks like these Volundigian, or however it's pronounced, boys, are getting pushed out, and Catholicism is taking back over. The Cathars down in southern France are still doing well, but the Hussites are definitely gone as well. There's only one province left, and it is in Prague. It also looks like the Bogomilists, or however it's pronounced, are getting pushed out of here as well. So that's a thing. I didn't show it off in the beginning, but we actually have some interesting ones like Kemetism. Zoroastrian is present at the beginning as well. It appears that this Yazidi is kind of like the Assyrian sort of religion. At least I assume they worship Ashur, which was, you know, where Assyria gets its name. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. We have sinned over here. Jain, which is pretty cool. We have Zen, Taoism, Mahayana, Confucian, of course, Bon. All the various different branches of pagans from sub-Saharan Africa have been broken up, as well as Southern Africa for that matter. So how about that? 1485, and we have a Catholic Congo, so that's pretty cool. The age of Reformation is upon us, and it definitely is. And boy, does it seem like we need it. Way too much Catholic going on over here. The Cathars have been mostly snuffed out. The Druids have mostly been snuffed out. And yeah, that's basically it. It's just Catholics and Protestants now. We have a center in Berlin, one up here in Ostjutland, and one up here in Chandalag, so that's pretty funny. I don't know if there's additional reformations that have been added, but if there are, we'll see them soon. Aside from that, borders are starting to clean up. I think Portugal formed Spain, which is hilarious, but Asturias is doing pretty good up there in the north. Burgundy is consolidating a lot of the development over in France. Styria is absolutely scary. It's like Austria-Hungary on steroids. Over here in the Levant, we have Antioch looking extremely strong, with Jerusalem separating them from the Knights Templar, apparently. Nubia consolidating a big chunk of the development south of Egypt, with Songhai and Mali doing their thing over here in the west. India is still a mess, but we have a couple of tags that are bigger than others, like Mysore, VJ, there's the Ahmedabad or Ahmednagar, whatever it's pronounced, Sirhind in the north, Koch over there in the east, but yeah, nobody massive yet. Not massive like this Yan over here on the east coast of China with this, I don't even know how to pronounce this. I'm not even going to try. These guys over here are competing with Yan. And up in the north, we have Mongolia, Jiangsu, and this Baekje nation. I think that's Korea. But I think the most interesting of all of them is Chernigov right next to this massive Tver in Russia. Looks like we may have a Russia form, but not by Muscovy this time around. We have Spanish La Plata, colonies getting set up in Peru, the Spanish Antilles over here. And it breaks my heart to say it, but it looks like they annexed the definitely not Mali nation. Meanwhile, Vinland is just refusing to do anything. It's like the meme with that guy holding the stick, like, come on, do something already. And over here, the rooftop Koreans just hanging out, still not doing much, just minding their own business. We are starting to get some pretty big natives, so we'll see what that looks like once the colonial game really starts picking up. but might be pretty hard for them. About 80 years in, and Spain has definitely skyrocketed up to that #1 spot, over 1,000 development, followed by Brabant, Styria, Tver, Burgundy, Northumberland, Antioch, Sunda, Volhynia, who I didn't even mention, Asturias, Chernigov, and Algiers in northern Africa. Though, yeah, Volhynia is currently getting dominated by Chernigov, so I'm not sure what that's going to translate to in the long term, but probably not going to go well for them. Now, I don't know if I'm just used to vanilla, but I don't really know how I feel about this color for Russia, but they did form, and they are very strong all the way down into Kazakhstan and over into China. Meanwhile, the Knights Templar and the Crusader Order of Antioch are pushing eastward into India. The Knights Templar have actually got all of Egypt as well as parts of the Horn of Africa, and they are all the way over into Gujarat, so they're having a really good game. Meanwhile, Chernigov over there in the east with Wallachia and Styria fighting it out for Balkan dominance. We do have Osman here, which is the Ottomans, fighting it out with Greece and this Macedonia, who has migrated down into Greece, of all places. We now have a Carthage that is formed, which is pretty sweet. I definitely don't like the color of it, but that is pretty cool. And meanwhile, Spain continues to do well, and it is Portuguese Spain. Keep that in mind. Asturias is doing well, right next to Burgundy, right next to Brabant, right next to... Northumberland formed Great Britain because why not? These jerks even went over and took out part of the Vinlanders, which is, you know, a bummer. But on the bright side, the Vinlanders have cool hats. I think that is a pretty cool hat. I would wear that hat. And meanwhile, in the New World, it is all Chickasaw, apparently. Chickasaw is supreme, with Afoncia and Nova Portugal over here in Mexico, as well as Louisiana. Zuni doing well, apparently. And I don't know what happened to these guys, but they must have got beat so bad that they depopulated the provinces, because these provinces used to be colonized by them. Regardless, Rio de la Plata doing good, Brazil doing good, and we now have Novos Algarves, which is pretty sweet. Sadly, slicing and dicing up an Inca that had formed by the AI, which I always think is pretty nice to see. We do have Asturian Colombia, because a lot of people don't know this, but Asturias gets a colonist, so that's a thing. And of all places, Reformed spawned in England, with parts of Asturias also colonized. So it looks like it's very well spread out throughout a bunch of these areas over here. Protestant in the north, and in the west is Reformed, but Catholic is probably still the strongest faith in Europe. That is aside from Orthodox, because Orthodox is obviously doing really well. But we can't count out Sul-Manusco and Remuva. They're still hanging in there. Also, I have no idea who formed this, but Malaya formed, and they are huge. All the way from Ayutthaya down through the islands, all the way up into the Philippines, even pushing over into Papua. That is really impressive. And as far as China goes, it's anybody's game. This Zibu Tudib guy took over the majority of the development, and Yan got destroyed. Between Jin and Shun, they are essentially dead. 1,121 years left. I definitely think we're just going to go to 1821. I had mentioned maybe going longer, but no, we're going to run it live, and we're going to take a look at what's going on with 120 years left. Great Britain doing as Great Britain does, taking little random provinces everywhere all over the Mediterranean, getting their naval bases. Spain has very clearly seen better days, and Burgundy has pushed well into Iberia. Also, it would be pretty easy to miss this, but Styria is not that far into Italy. That is actually Italy that has formed, and it's like exactly the same color as Styria. Of course, you would have noticed Brabant formed the Netherlands, and they were actually a personal union under Styria last I looked, so I assume they broke free and they were able to form the Netherlands. We have Wakanda popping out of Central Africa and dominating the majority of the development of the continent. I think they were formed by Songhai, but I could be wrong. And the Knights Templar as well as Antioch continue their relentless push east, all the way midway through India and all the way into northern China for Antioch. China, which has been united under the Great Zhao, pushing down into Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and a bit of Burma for some reason. But yeah, Korea all the way up into Manchuria as well as Mongolia. Looking really good. Japan is still a mess, but this Shiba color is very nice. I like the Shiba color. Malaya continues to dominate, getting Papua under their control and pushing a bit more north. But that is not them over in India. That is a different tag called a Tamilakam. We have Australia over here, and then some native tag over here. And of course, with the collapse of Spain, you're going to see some nations popping out. We have Chile over here. Leone's Colombia is now just Colombia. Cuba is an independent nation, as is Mexico, as is the United States, right next to Florida. But don't get it twisted, Florida is a colony of Burgundy, apparently. I never would have thought that I would see colonial Burgundy, but here it is. Chickasaw still number 1 next to the US of A, as well as New Asturias, Newfoundland, and then a couple of random people own a couple of random provinces in Canada, but aside from Newfoundland, nothing major. Though we do have one province over here, the capital of Vinland, a colonial nation of Norway. As I said, 120 years left. Number 1 great power of the world is actually the Knights Templar, which I would not have guessed, followed by Zhao, Antioch, Chernigov, Malaya, Great Britain, Styria, Russia, Wakanda Forever, Burgundy, Netherlands, and Spain, rounding out the 12th spot, even though they have been completely dominated since their inevitable fall. We also have a military hegemon for Wakanda at 30% and counting. Ah, yeah, the Great Republic of Florida. And what a great republic she is. From sea to shining sea. We've gone 20 years past the usual end date, and I'm going to call it here. I don't actually know how late it goes. There's an extra age here, Age of Industrialization and Age of Enlightenment. I believe that those are new, and they definitely have new things, but I think some of them are repeated. Regardless, let's take a look at what's going on. Toledo ended up filling up the gap that was left by Spain over in the mainland of Iberia, with Lotharingia taking up a lot of the dev over in Germany as well as northern Italy. For some reason, this one province over here is Antioch. I don't know why they have it. Trieste is this province literally right here, so they must have been an OPM who just got really big. Scandinavia did pretty well for themselves and fended off the Ruskies. Though Gotland still exists with Gotland, as well as Bornholm, which I believe they have in 1444 in this mod. I don't know how you say this, Arkhangelsk or whatever is still existing, and it's been there for like 200 years, so that's pretty good. And Russia had a good game, pushing all the way down into central China and parts of Taiwan, splitting it with Antioch and Malaya, apparently. I don't know what happened to that Chinese tag, but yeah, it's gone. Japan united, which is pretty cool. And Terra Australia, or however it's pronounced, conquered NZ. I think I have to say my favorite tag out of all of this is actually a vanilla tag, Malaya. They ended up doing extremely well, and I respect it. I always love to see the AI succeeding. Though the Knights Templar in Antioch did extremely well with probably the most unorthodox borders I can imagine in a Paradox game. Especially Antioch. Like, what is this? It looks like Wakanda was pushed back a bit by the Knights, but not a whole lot. Though we do have Kitara and Bemba down here in the south, right next to the Netherlands and the Templar South Africa, with the Netherlands capital in Cape Town. That's a thing. We have Cubans here in the West African coast. And of course, we have Fernando Po here, the island, the stronghold of the Knights Templar. Chile ended up taking up the majority of the div in South America, beating out Colombia and I think parts of Brazil. But funnily enough, there's some Cuban provinces down here, notably the Falkland Islands. This Colombi is a colony of Lotharingia, and then Mexican Brazil is, Mexican, which is pretty sweet. And of course, the most famous iteration of Costa Rica, Russian Costa Rica. We do have Malayan Cascadia. It turns out that the Russians sold Alaska to the Malayans. Haida ended up migrating, and they are now in like none of it. Don't ask me why. And Newfoundland and Scandinavian Lower Acadia still exist with Vinland over here. But yeah, it's all Florida. Florida has dominated North America, and somehow Vinland succeeded in holding on over here in New Burnley, which is Eriksfjord, with their new hat, which I think this is an even better version of the other hat, Milady. And as far as religions go, it's all Reformed and Protestant in Germany, with Orthodox taking up the rest of it. But you can't forget about the Catholic boys over in Iberia, as well as Turkey, pushing all the way over into China, bordering with more Orthodox boys as well as Buddhists. And most of the stuff in sub-Saharan Africa remains, as well as down here, but some of it's been converted, like down here in South Africa. The New World is mostly Catholic with some Sunni and animists, but Reformed in the north. And North America is almost exclusively Catholic with some totemists, as well as some Reformed up in Canada. Cultures have definitely been converted, with the Polish pushing the Prussians mostly out of Prussia, as well as the Latvians pushing the Prussia out of Latvia. Russian culture did quite well, pushing all the way into Carpathia and, of course, the Muscovites. I think Walloon culture may have expanded a bit, and Gascon definitely pushed out the Basques. Occitan also pushed a bit into northern Italy as well as northern Iberia. Poor Italian got pushed back between Austrians and Occitans. You hate to see it. Manchu actually joined the Chinese group, which is pretty cool. I think that when Manchu forms, their culture is switched from Jurchen to Manchu, and depending on how things go, they can join the Chinese group. I don't actually know 100% how that works. South America is a bit of a mixed bag with Brazilian down here in the south and Asturian in the north, and some Guy over here, as well as some Incan cultures over here. And of course, you can't forget about the Northumbrian culture over here in Brazil and the northern parts of South America. Northumbrian and American culture almost exclusively in Canada, with Asturian and Portuguese culture filling out the majority of North America, with Asturian mostly in Canada and Portuguese mostly in mainland America, as well as the Caribbean. Of course, we have a bit of Scandinavian cultures with Vinlandic and Norwegian, but honestly, they underperformed, and I was disappointed considering how good of a situation Vinland was in the beginning. We do have some Chinese cultures in California as well as in Alaska, which is pretty cool. But at one point, Constantinople was conquered by the Osmans, and it was culture converted to Turkish. This mod is absolutely awesome, and I really enjoyed making this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. If you did, make sure you let me know by leaving a like on the video and leave a comment below if you have a suggestion of something you would like to see on the channel, a mod or something like that. Also, my patrons got early access to this video as early as 2 weeks ago, so if you want early access to videos, make sure you check out my Patreon linked in the description. And if you want to join my Discord, my subreddit, or my Twitter, those things are all linked in the description below the video. That is all I've got for you for today. I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day. And until next time, stay chill.